Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football is brought to you by your local Anheuser-Busch distributors. Ray Eldridge Jewelry, elegance without the attitude. Peoria and Decatur. Physician's Choice Wellness. Give your weight away today. And Buffalo Wild Wings. Mattoon, Champaign, Savoy.
This is Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football, the show that gives you a unique look into college sports, a look at the big picture across college football, the Fighting Illini, and the Big Ten Conference. Hello, folks. I'm Matt Lovelace, coming to you from Buffalo Wild Wings in Savoy, as we do every week. We're going to take a look at Week 11 in the college football season. We'll also look back at Week 10, which included a couple of games with some national title implications connected with them. Plus, we'll look at Illinois, Ohio State, and look at today's matchup against Minnesota. Now, of course, we always get our expertise from our panel, Bob Osmussen, Brian Barnhart, and Steve Kelly. Those guys will break down some of the big topics and a lot of the Illini coming up over the next hour. Guys?
In a weekend of really big games, there was the biggest game. The game a year ago that was the biggest game twice, and it was the biggest game this year. Alabama, LSU. LSU looked like they were in command, and Alabama did what Alabama does all the time, which is made some plays, scored a late touchdown, won the game, and kept their national title hopes alive. Very impressive. A.J. McCarron has to be considered a Heisman candidate at least, and Nick Saban is once again a genius.
Well, Brian and I both were in Columbus for the Ohio State game, and we got back in time to see the end of that ball game, and I was really impressed the way that Alabama just drove it down the field there at the end of the game. I thought LSU might get it done, but Alabama just took it to the house when they had to.
That was the first time all year I've seen Alabama actually struggle.
Yeah.
They were on their heels, and they were within a couple of minutes of losing that ball game. And if LSU gets another first down or whatever happens that allows Alabama to lose that ball game, then now that it's happened, is anybody going to beat Alabama?
Well, I think it makes them look a little vulnerable, to be honest. And the more I think about Oregon and Alabama in a national title game, the more I think that will be a real challenge if Alabama gets in that situation, because Oregon is going to be able to put pressure on them offensively like nobody ever, like nobody in the history of the game. They just put up 60 on Southern Cal. Nobody has ever done that to Southern Cal. Nobody's ever gained 700 yards against Southern Cal. And here's Oregon, boom, 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 right down the field. So that's the game we want to see. Let's be honest. I wish there was a 4-team playoff this year. I'd love to see Kansas State in the mix. And let's talk about the team that should have gotten beat this weekend. Notre Dame. They're playing Pitt. Pitt's got the game, and misses a field goal and loses the game. And I think Notre Dame is lucky, but also maybe a little charmed.
Yep. Lucky and good. I mean, it helps to be both. And certainly, they've had the games. BYU, a team they should beat, they struggle with along the way. Then they go out and blow out Oklahoma. And then they come back in Pitt, they struggle with Pitt. And Pitt's getting better under former Wisconsin assistant, but they're still not there yet.
When I saw Ohio State play as well as they did against Illinois, I really gave hard consideration to bumping Ohio State ahead of Illinois, or ahead of Notre Dame, not ahead of Illinois, ahead of Notre Dame in my national poll. I didn't do it, but I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking long and hard about it. And if they continue to go like that, if Notre Dame struggles this week against BC, you got to think about it.
And back in the Big Ten, another outstanding comeback by Nebraska on the road as they win their game last week at Michigan State. So they've done that 2 weeks in a row now to get back in the picture.
Well, and again, they are playing kind of very loose and very confident, I think. So, well, that's enough on the national scene. Let's go back to Matt.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Coming up next, a road trip to Ohio that did not, thankfully, include a campaign rally. We'll dig into Illinois, Ohio State, and talk about the reasons the Illini felt just a little bit better about the performance last week. That's next on Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football. Welcome back to Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football here at Buffalo Wild Wings in Savoy. Now a treat for the fans who show up to our taping of the show. Our local Anheuser-Busch distributor, Ronchetti Distributing, gives us 2 tickets to give to a lucky Illini fan and one of their friends so they can go to the game this week. Now you have to be here for our taping of Inside the Illini Wednesdays at noon. Show up at 11, stay for lunch, enter to win some tickets. We'll announce the winner coming up later in the show. 2 free tickets to today's game against Minnesota. Now, last week, it was a battle between a couple of old friends, new Ohio State coach Urban Meyer and, of course, Tim Beckman of the Fighting Illini, dating back to their coaching days in Bowling Green. But as we found out, A little bit of friendship doesn't necessarily mean mercy when a 9-0 team takes on a 2-6 team, as our Central Illinois Buick dealers give us our look in the rear view as we go on the road to Ohio State.
There were a few Illini faithful, but most of the 105,000 at Ohio Stadium rained boos on their opponents. But Illinois seemed up to the task. A strong opening sequence for the Illini defense, a quick 3-and-out. In fact, in 7 of their 9 games, the Illini have held opponents to 3 plays or fewer on their opening drives. 4 of those were 3-and-outs, and in the other 3, they forced turnovers.
I feel like we're prepared, going into the game. I think the kids have a pretty good idea, what to expect.
In Big Ten play, however, that trend has yet to hold throughout a game. After the Illini took a lead with a 47-yard field goal from Nick Imicus, that stifling defense disappeared. And Ohio State finished off a 79-yard touchdown drive on the handoff to Carlos Hyde, and Ohio State led 7-3. Imicus knocked another through the uprights, and after a quarter, it was 7-6.
We've got to be more consistent on offense. We've got to be able to drive the football, and we've got to put 7 points on the scoreboard in the red zone.
Second quarter, Ohio State pulled away. Hyde with the ball again, this time from 5 yards out. Ohio State went up by 11. Minutes later, Braxton Miller looking deep, and he connects with Rod Smith for a 51-yard score. A big play that, like so many other times, deflated the Illini.
Momentum is one of those things that, when it's on your side, obviously it's a good thing, and when it's going against you, it's a tough thing.
And the Buckeyes weren't done. Still in the second, Hyde again, his 3rd touchdown of the day, a 137-yard rushing day for him. Ohio State scored 24 points in the second quarter. It was 31-6 at the half. Out of the locker room, more of the same, this time from Miller. The QB takes one himself. Touchdown Buckeyes, a 38-6 game. And while the teams traded scores after that, an Illini touchdown from John Davis here, it was never in doubt again. Ohio State cruised to a 52-22 victory.
Credit goes to the Ohio State Buckeyes and the way they were prepared to play in this football game.
The Illini were a bit happier with this performance. The difference, essentially that abysmal second quarter. But in the end, at 2-7, the chance at a 3rd straight bowl game was erased.
Our goal is to start seeing the bowl game. We're not there yet. We're not there right now. We won't get there this year. But we have to be able to be a better team at the end of the season than we are right now, than we were at the start of the year.
Well, guys, the Illini started okay. Nick Imicus back from an injury, hit a couple of field goals early, 43 and 28. The Illini had a couple of long drives. It was in the second quarter when the game fell apart for them. It was too much Carlos Hyde and too much Braxton Miller.
Yeah, if you stepped away for a minute to go get yourself a snack or something, the game was close and you come back and it's like, what happened? And you realize a couple things. First of all, Ohio State's pretty good. That's the reality of that. They're a whole lot better than Illinois, and Illinois is in a situation now where you don't see them coming out of it. They are going this way. Everybody else is going up. Minnesota coming in this week and playing better than Illinois. So this is not a good fit for Illinois. Illinois has gone into that building many, many times and played great games. But it's either, if you notice the history of that thing, it's either Illinois wins or hangs close, or they just get annihilated. And this was they just get annihilated game.
Yeah, and it seems to snowball, Steve, when things with teams that are struggling, things start to go wrong. It just really kind of builds on itself.
As you mentioned, Illinois was right in there, 7-6 after 1 quarter of play, but 24 points in the second quarter made it a 31-6 halftime OSU advantage. Kind of hard to find a bright spot or two in a 30-point loss, but there were a couple. One was the play of Terry Hawthorne in the return game. 6 returns on kickoffs, 158 yards, including a 45-yarder to get the Illini some field position they didn't necessarily capitalize on. But that and the return of Corey Lewis, I thought, were 2 good stories there.
I think it was the longest return Illinois had in about 4 or 5 years with the return by Hawthorne, and you kind of saw the explosiveness that he can have and what he brings to the table when he's healthy.
Oh, absolutely. And defensively, this is very important for him for his future, because he's got to show the NFL, A, I can be healthy, B, I can play, and he had a good game defensively as well. So look out for Terry Hawthorne down the road, and I'm glad for him that he's got it back going. He's had a tough year injury-wise. He's had a tough career injury-wise, but he's a good kid who's done a lot of things the right way. So you really credit him for coming back and playing the way he has. I follow fake Tim Beckman on Twitter. I don't know if you guys do this or not, but I found something funny on there last night. He said, good to see somebody from Illinois can go to Ohio and actually get a win. And he was talking about, of course, Barack Obama last night. but Illinois and Tim Beckman could not get a win there. Down the road, it could happen again, but I don't know. It's as I wrote afterward, I have a hard time seeing that game come around again.
Unless the game is overtime, and normally you don't see two-point conversions, but we saw 2 of them. Unusual plays. They always kind of do the setup with the field goals and extra points, and in this case it paid off once anyway.
Good for Tim Russell, because former quarterback in high school, I'm sure that's a thrill for him, something he'll cherish 20 or 30 years down the road. And Ashante Williams, we got to mention him.
Yep.
Another long touchdown on defense. That's 2 for the year. So give Ashante a lot of credit. He hasn't quit, no question.
First time since 2001 that Illini defender had 2 returns, 2 defensive touchdowns. He's got a pick for a touchdown, pick 6, and that fumble return. You got to go back to Christian Morton back in 2001 when he had 2 pick 6s.
And you mentioned Tim Russell not only throwing for the 2 points, but also on a bobbled snap. He then ran in one for 2 points, so kind of showing his versatility in that role on last Saturday. So that's it for now with this segment. Let's go back to Matt.
Hey, thanks, guys. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the Big Ten, starting with the Leaders Division as usual. That's next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football.
The Inside the Illini Weekly MVP is brought to you by Shields, Gear, Passion, Sports. The most valuable Illini player from the previous week, and though we saw some underwhelming performances across the board, the reemergence of the big guy, John Davis, provided a spark. The tight end utility player factored into the Illinois running game last Saturday, 8 carries and 27 yards, including this touchdown. He also had 2 receptions for 14 yards. For an offense that didn't gain much, Davis was one of the few players that looked much improved last week.
Welcome back to Inside the Illini here at Buffalo Wild Wings in Savoy. Now, think about just 2 weeks ago. Wisconsin had all but wrapped up the Leaders Division title with Ohio State and Penn State out of contention because of sanctions. Now suddenly, of all teams, Indiana. Yes, Indiana is a win this week away from the inside track to the Big Ten title game. What a strange year it is. Our Eric Harold has a look at the Week 10 in highlights.
Thank you, Matt. Still alone atop the Leaders Division after their beatdown of Illinois is Ohio State, thanks to plays like this. Braxton Miller looking to the end zone. He's just going to stroll in himself. Miller, touchdown. More Miller, looking to the end zone. This time he does it with his arm. Corey Brown, touchdown reception. Ohio State, they go up 45-14 later. Briante Dunn takes a handoff, 3-yard score. Ohio State dominates Illinois, 52-22. They remain in the lead in the Leaders Division. Meanwhile, right on their tail is Penn State. They defeat Purdue 34-9 to remain within 1 game of Ohio State in the Leaders Division. Matt McGloin led the way for the Nittany Lions, throwing for 321 yards and 2 touchdowns. Penn State 4-1 in the Big Ten. Meanwhile, Purdue, they remain winless in the Big Ten. They and Illinois, the only 2 teams that have not had conference victories. And finally, Indiana defeats Iowa out of the Legends Division. Cameron Kaufman leads the way with 315 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. The Hoosiers improved to 4-5, 2-3 in the Big Ten. That is all for the Leaders Division, and now, back to the Inside the Illini team in Savoy.
As you look at the Leaders Division, Ohio State in first place at 6-0, Penn State in second at 4-1. Forget all that. It doesn't matter. Those 2 teams ineligible for postseason play. And as we mentioned before the break and in that previous piece, Indiana right in the hunt. And who would have thought that? You could have won some big money in Vegas if you'd have said Indiana this late in the season would be in the picture for the Big Ten title game.
And we've been talking about Urban Meyer and obviously Bill O'Brien as Coach of the Year. And we better start talking about Kevin Wilson, because that guy took a team that was brutal last year. They were one of the worst teams in the country, and he's got them 3 wins away from playing for the Big Ten title. Now, that's just, that's insane, is the best way to put it. It makes no sense, but give him credit for piecing that thing together. Their win against Iowa was impressive. Their win against Illinois was impressive, really, in hindsight. And he's hung in there. Could have beat Ohio State. So give them a ton of credit for playing as hard and as well as they play.
And for Illinois fans looking at next year, you've got Kevin Wilson in his 2nd year at the helm. He's kind of brought in some players. He brought in some junior college help. I know Illinois is thinking about doing some of that too. And I think he's just made a difference. And people, obviously they're going to be patient at Indiana because they haven't had much success at all down through the years. But the fact that the team was so bad last year, and look how much they've improved in year 2.
Well, if you look at the top of the Leaders Division, and we looked at the middle, which might be the top, you got to look at the bottom, and 2 teams are 0-5 right there in that is Purdue and Illinois. Those teams meet next week. We'll talk more about that later. Question will be, will they both still be winless in Big Ten play? Will that be the battle for the basement? Could be, but those two teams are certainly going the wrong way.
And Danny Hope, he's in huge trouble. We were talking earlier about some possible replacements down the road. We don't want to get into that too much because we certainly want Danny Hope to stick around, but I think there's a huge problem there, and just the fact that they haven't progressed like they thought they would, and I think that's a problem. Kevin Wilson's deal, you mentioned that, and a year ago, they were ready to run him out of town. I mean, everybody was mad at him, and they thought, wow, we've made a horrible decision. And I think this shows you, kind of in the Tim Beckman situation too, you got to give the guy more than a year. Kevin Wilson came into a tough deal, and he had to make a lot of changes, and he made the changes, and I think Tim Beckman is having to do the same thing. So I don't think it's automatic that guy that struggles in the first year, you go back to Barry Alvarez's first year at Wisconsin, they were awful, and they turned it around. So you've got to give a guy a chance.
Well, Indiana's 2-3 in the league. Wisconsin is 3-2 rather. They play each other later today over in Bloomington, where we mentioned earlier Indiana came back from trailing 14-3 against Iowa to win that game by 3 last week. So it's a big game. We'll talk more about that. That might find its way into our picks a little bit later on. That's a look at the Leaders Division. We'll throw things back over to Matt.
Hey, thanks, guys, and thank goodness for Indiana. Making things exciting in the Leaders Division, that's exactly what we want. Next up, we'll talk Legends Division, where it's really been in doubt all season. That's next on Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football.
The Inside the Illini Play of the Week is sponsored by our local Anheuser-Busch distributor, Ronchetti Distributing. And it wasn't a big surprise if you'd watched the Ohio State film prior to the game, the shiftiness of Braxton Miller. This wasn't even a scoring play. Miller forced to his left, and he sees a seam running for the end zone, escape what looks like a sure tackle down at the 4-yard line, set up one of Carlos Hyde's 3 touchdown runs. Braxton Miller with our Play of the Week.
Welcome back to Buffalo Wild Wings in Savoy for Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football. Talking some Legends Division now. Nebraska controls their own destiny here with 3 weeks to go, but they can't afford a single slip-up. Michigan tied, Northwestern nipping at their heels. We go back to Eric Harold for the highlights from Week 10 in the Legends.
Thank you, Matt. We head out to East Lansing for a Legends Division matchup between the Michigan State Spartans and the 20th ranked Cornhuskers. First quarter, Le'Veon Bell up the middle and into the end zone for the touchdown. Spartans up by 7. Nebraska would answer. Taylor Martinez drops back, hits Amir Abdullah in the flat. That's 7, all tied up. Nebraska trailing. Taylor Martinez fakes a handoff, runs around the right side, past the defense into the secondary, to the 30, to the 20, to the 10. Touchdown Nebraska. They tie it up at 14. Later, fourth quarter, Le'Veon Bell up the middle once again for a touchdown. Michigan State up 24-14. Nebraska having to come back. They would get back within 3. Taylor Martinez takes the snap, looks to the end zone. Touchdown, Nebraska. Jamal Turner with the touchdown catch that puts Nebraska up for good. They win this one 28-24. And so Michigan would have to defeat Minnesota to remain tied with Nebraska atop the Legends Division. They would have to do it without Denard Robinson. Devin Gardner in for Robinson, looks down the field to Roy Roundtree. In traffic, Roundtree comes up with the catch, sets him up at the 2-yard line, where Devin Gardner fakes the handoff, rolls right, he's got a guy in his face, escapes, sprints up the field, gets through the last 2 tacklers and into the end zone. Gardner, touchdown, puts Michigan up 28-10, and they would win this one 35-13. And finally, rounding out the Legends Division, Iowa playing Indiana out of the leaders. They lose 24-21. Cavante Martin-Manley leads the team in receiving, 131 yards and 1 touchdown, but that performance not enough to lift the Hawkeyes over the Hoosiers. Their Big Ten record falls to 2-3. And that does it for the Legends Division. Now, back to the Inside the Illini team in Savoy.
I've followed the Nebraska football program pretty well over the course of my lifetime. In the first 50 years of my life, they maybe had 1 or 2 comebacks from double-digit deficits. This year, they've had 3 comebacks from double-digit deficits. This is a completely different program. This is a team that now gets behind and doesn't worry. And I will tell you, they would play games 20 years ago. They fall behind by a field goal, and the fans would freak out, and the team would freak out. They don't do that anymore. They just come back, they play. Taylor Martinez, honestly might be the best player in the Big Ten, short of Braxton Miller. Got to give it to Braxton first. But Taylor Martinez, week after week after week, drives his team up and down the field. Now, he also throws interceptions that are horribly timed, and Nebraska should have lost this game. They threw an interception, he got returned for a touchdown, but got called back by a really stupid Michigan State penalty. But Nebraska overcame that, came back, and tell you what, they look pretty good right now.
And they're not making many friends in the state of Michigan right now because they beat Michigan, and Denard Robinson, he got knocked out of that game. And then, of course, they managed to win at Michigan State, which was an impressive win at the end. But you're right, those old Nebraska teams, they just never got behind.
They never got behind.
Rarely behind.
So they weren't real good at catching up.
Right.
Now they're good at catching up. And having a passing game there, I think the fans are still kind of wondering what's going on here. I think they've thought they've gone into a different dimension or whatever. But they are playing well. Their defense is starting to pick it up a little bit, which had been a problem early in the season. So I think they would love to have a do-over against Ohio State. They're not going to get that, but they very well could get a do-over against Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game. Or what they'd really like is a game against Indiana for the Big Ten title and a spot in the Rose Bowl. I think they would all say, yeah, we'll do that.
I got kind of one of those legendary marquee games, if you will, between programs at least. Later today, Nebraska playing host to Penn State out in Lincoln, and Penn State playing pretty well. We know the history behind that. But Penn State, I think, is still one of the stories in the Big Ten, and Bill O'Brien perhaps is still the coach of the year in the Big Ten, not to take anything away from Urban Meyer.
No, or Kevin Wilson.
Right.
Or Bo Pelini. What the heck? Bo Pelini, I like that he sits there and gets angry and doesn't apologize for it. But the big game besides that, obviously, is Michigan and Northwestern today, and hard to read that to me. Northwestern has played very well at times. They've built big leads and then blown big leads against Penn State, against Nebraska. It's just kind of hard to figure them out.
And Northwestern does have a shot, though, at 8 wins now, if they can get that done today. And obviously, Devin Gardner stepped in at the last minute. I mean, Brady Hoke pulled the switcheroo last week, and as it turned out, it worked for him. But we'll see what happens today.
And every win for Northwestern helps with the bowl process. And I know the long-term idea for Pat Fitzgerald is, let's get us some wins. Let's keep moving up that Big Ten pecking order, because that's a hard thing to do. Their recruiting continues to get better, and I think that guy's building the thing that's going to last for a long, long time.
Yep.
Well, that's it on the legends, and let's go back to Matt.
Thanks, guys. That wraps up the first half of the show. Talked a lot of college football. We'll take a trip to the pros next on Illini and the Pros on Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football.
The Inside the Illini Gem of the Week is brought to you by Ray Eldridge Jewelry. Elegance without the attitude in Peoria and Decatur. A gem of a day from Oregon's Kenyon Barner. The Duck running back against a top 20 USC team ran wild. 321 yards, 5 touchdowns. Both of those were school records. That was also the highest rushing total allowed by a USC defense ever by an astonishing 80 yards. As Oregon jumps up a spot to number 3 in the BCS.
Welcome back to Inside the Illini. Time now for our weekly trip through the NFL, which included a great day for a Detroit Lion running back. Noah Newman has our look at Illini and the Pros.
Good morning, Matt. Champaign Centennial's Mikel LaShore really broke onto the scene earlier this season in late September when he scored his first career touchdown and 100 yards in his first career start. But since then, he had been relatively quiet, well, until this past Sunday in Jacksonville against the Jaguars. LaShore had a big game, and he did most of his damage in the second quarter. First, with no score in the second, LaShore takes it up the middle from 7 yards out for the touchdown. That made it 7-0 Lions. Then, less than 5 minutes later, they give it to him inside the 1-yard line, and he gets the job done once again. 14-0 Lions. Later in the quarter, with just 30 seconds until halftime, LaShore again bounces it outside and gets into the end zone for his 3rd touchdown of the quarter, a turkey. Final stat line on the day, 70 yards, 3 scores. LaShore gets the game ball and afterwards dedicated it to his son, who was born just a few days earlier on Halloween.
Man, like I said earlier, God is great. It's a blessing to have a healthy son. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and he was good. And my whole thing, this game was for him. And I got out there, and my O-line helped me out, and we got it done. My first touchdown ball, my mother got. I'll probably keep this one for my son.
All 3 of them.
Yeah, all 3 of them.
Moving on, after a slow start to the season, Whitney Merciless, coming on strong, had another sack last week, his 2nd straight game with a sack. That's going to do it for us in the studio. We'll send it back to you in Savoy with more on Illini and the Pros.
Well, obviously, guys, a big weekend for Mikel LaShore. We saw him do it at Champaign Centennial High School. We saw him doing it at Illinois, and he finally is now starting to do it in the NFL.
He must have thought he was playing against Northwestern or something, because he ran for 3 touchdowns, had a nice game, and it's, you can tell he's coming. He's getting it figured out. It was a rough first year, obviously a horrible rookie year, and then a rough beginning to this year. But like all guys, it's kind of piecing it together, and they're playing better. Now, I want to see him do that against the Packers or against the Bears. I want to see him do that against a great team, and I think he can.
We saw him wear number 5 at Illinois, and of course, before him, Rashard Mendenhall, who's trying to get healthy, I guess. We just haven't seen much of him.
Yeah, he's been out again with a foot injury, and before him, not with the same number, but before him in the Illini backfield, Pierre Thomas, still having a pretty solid year as well. 21 former Illini are on rosters right now. Not all were active last week. 4 offensive linemen, 4 defensive linemen, so they're represented well there and doing well in the NFL.
Well, one guy we saw in Columbus who was not on the field but is with the Patriots, so they were off, was Tavon Wilson. Showed up, spoke to the team, along with former Illini Trulon Henry, so it was good to see those guys.
Yeah, he's hanging out with the guys, hanging out with the media, hanging out with everybody, and what a terrific story he is. Just an unbelievable deal, the fact that he's been able to come back and play like he has. Again, a surprise pick, and yet if the Patriots pick you, it's probably a good sign, because they know what they're doing. They're not dopes.
Another good story is a former guy in the NFL, Tony Pachos, who is in town. He'll be at the game today. He's endowing some money back to the University of Illinois for the naming of the offensive line room in the football building.
Mentioned Tavon with the New England Patriots. Trulon, by the way, is teaching special ed out on the East Coast.
Good for him.
A great guy, great story for him from his past and the way he's matured and developed into a really model citizen and benefiting others as well. So that's some former Illini in the news, in the NFL as well. And let's go back to Matt.
Thanks, guys. Coming up next, we'll go inside the Panthers. Eastern just keeps on rolling. We'll hear what Coach Dino Babers and the players have to say about this run toward the OVC title. That's next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football. Hey folks, welcome back to Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football. Talking EIU now, and even when you get this team down 10-0 on the road, they're a tough one to beat this year. We go inside the Panthers with Eastern Illinois University.
Playing their second game in a row on the road, Eastern Illinois was in Cookeville, Tennessee to play OVC rival Tennessee Tech. The Golden Eagles had come up on the short end of all their games leading up to the game against EIU. The Panthers fell behind the Golden Eagles 10-0 in the first quarter. The only points of the second quarter came via the big play, as EIU cut the Tennessee Tech lead to 10-7 at halftime. The Panthers received the ball to start the third quarter and made the most of the possession, punching it into the end zone.
Touchdown, Panthers.
Tennessee Tech tied the game in the latter stages of the third quarter at 17. The Panthers wasted no time regaining the lead, with the big play striking again on just the second play of their next possession.
Pass complete to number 81, Chris Wright.
The Garoppolo to Wright connection gave EIU a 24-17 lead. Tennessee Tech got inside the EIU 25-yard line on the first possession of the fourth, but it would result in a costly turnover.
Pass is intercepted by the Panthers.
EIU turned the turnover into points as Taylor Duncan capped off a 12-play drive and sealed the game as EIU moves to 5-1 in the OVC with a 31-24 win.
I can't say enough about the defense. I thought they did a great job of battling early, even though there was a lot of penalties. And I thought the offense came in and did the things they needed to do at clutch times to breathe life into this offense. And overall, I mean, outside of the kickoffs going out of bounds, I thought the special teams was really, really good. They made a conscious effort to take away Eric Laura. We're fine with that. There's no egos with our wide receiving core. And I've told you this before, we don't gear it up for a guy to get that many catches. But Shavar, what a wonderful job that he did. Chris Wright, the old steady senior, coming in and making a big play, getting behind the defense and outrunning two DBs for a touchdown. I mean, how big were those two plays to breathe life and energy back into the sidelines?
EIU is currently tied with UT Martin for the conference lead. The Panthers' final conference game is today against Southeast Missouri State. A win by EIU would give the Panthers at least a share of the OVC title.
We need to go out there as a team with keen focus and stay locked in on our job and our assignments. The defense is playing an option-oriented football team. If you are not assignment right, that game can get out of hand in a hurry. Offensively, we're playing a defense that likes to stop the run, that can bang people around. They're physical every day with their offense, and we've got to find ways to score points and get up on them so that we can maybe make their offense play a different style of game than what they want to play.
It's great to go out with your senior season knowing you have a chance to be a conference champion. So, I mean, we really worked for it, so I feel like it's earned. It wasn't just given to us. We really worked hard and earned it. I mean, we're real confident, but we don't like to look ahead, and that's one thing that Coach Babers always preaches to us. So, you know, we make sure we go hard in practice and we don't underestimate anyone. So, you know, we're taking it day by day, but we are confident. We do expect to win.
EIU's quest for an OVC championship continues today against SEMO at the top of the hour. The Panthers and Redhawks will play before a national audience on Fox College Sports. With a win, EIU would have their first 4-game win streak since the last time the Panthers made the postseason in 2009. Reporting on the Eastern Illinois Panthers for Inside the Illini, I'm Ryan Snodgrass of WEIU TV.
And as always, thanks to Eastern for that report. Coming up next, our Healthy Choice Pick'em. Plus, we go to Facebook to answer your questions about Illini football. That's straight ahead on Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football. Welcome back to Inside the Illini here at Buffalo Wild Wings. I've joined the table for our weekly Healthy Choice Pick'em. Give your weight away today. Each week, Physicians Choice Wellness will sponsor us to make our best predictions for the upcoming week in college football. And first, a quick look at the standings. Things remain tight. We've got 3 weeks left to decide whose charity gets the dough. 7-2, 3 of us. Steve, Bob, and I, Brian at 6-3. And a lot of games that were maybe in a little bit of doubt this week. I think we were all sweating a little bit. We all ended up 4-0 in the end, but interesting games. And my pick, Indiana. You know, they're going to make things interesting in the Leaders Division, so I'm excited about that. We're interested to see that. All right, start with my pick here. Going to the Big 12, Kansas State and TCU. I look at the lines for this one. This is a pick'em game. TCU coming off, or has a win over West Virginia, as does Kansas State. A couple of teams. It's interesting because it's all going to hinge on whether or not Colin Klein plays and whether or not he's healthy. I know he suffered an injury last week, and my pick is going to depend on whether or not he's going to play. Coach says at this point he's probably going to play, so I would say Kansas State is probably going to win. So I'm picking Kansas State over TCU. It's really going to make things interesting in the BCS.
Bill Snyder's never lied.
Ever.
Just wanted to warn you. Yeah. He's never lied.
Well,
I guarantee Colin Klein's going to play because Bill Snyder says he's going to play. The dude lies all the time. I love him. He's the greatest coach in the country, but lies all the time. Sorry.
I think he'll play.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I'm not a liar.
I'm going to stick in the Big Ten. Matt mentioned Indiana and their comeback win. I'm going to stick with the Hoosiers in my pick this week. Indiana taking on Wisconsin. That game in Bloomington. Big game in the standings. I don't know that you would have predicted that at the beginning of the season. As I mentioned, Indiana just a game behind Wisconsin. Wisconsin has some quarterback issues. They're playing on the road, but I think they win. I'm going with the Badgers in Bloomington against Indiana.
Well, obviously a big game for LSU last week. They had a chance at home in Baton Rouge at night to beat Alabama. They did not get that done. Mississippi State's had a really good year. We're undefeated until I think they played Alabama. And now they get a chance to go to LSU. And I think, Les Miles does some strange things sometimes. The Mad Hatter, they call him. But I think at home, I think LSU will take care of business. So take LSU over Mississippi State.
I really want to win this contest more than I want anything else, more than I want Bill Snyder not to lie. I want to win this contest. So I'm going to go out on a deep, deep limb here. I'm going to take Alabama playing against Texas A&M. Alabama, not sure how good they are. I think they still got some struggles. I don't think they've won very many games this year. But I like the Crimson Tide. I like them against Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M can give these people a game. Texas A&M is vastly improved. Boy, Kevin Sumlin, what an unbelievable coach. What a great job he's done. but he's not quite good enough to beat Alabama this year, maybe next year.
You were the guy who had the secret that Wisconsin was going to run away with the Leaders Division.
Yeah, I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I never get predictions right. So.
He lied,
so probably
actually. Yeah.
Texas A&M, I'd probably bet Texas A&M.
Bob Osmondson never tells the truth. No,
right.
I'm just kidding. All right, coming up right here, going to Facebook to answer your questions, and a good one this week, and a topic that I've been curious to talk about for a little while. This one comes from Rob. A lot was made about the use of tight ends at the beginning of the season, so why does it seem they barely factored into the Illini offense this year? And I remember going back to the beginning of the year, well, the talk was about the depth and the talent and the size. John Davis, Eddie Valunas, Evan Wilson, all these guys that build this depth in the tight end on the roster. Where have they been?
Good question. John Davis has been, we found out a little bit later, he'd been a little bit banged up, but he's got 8 receptions, most of those coming early in the season. The tight ends combined only have 18 pass receptions on the season. So it's a very good question. Don't know what the answer is. They did use John Davis a little bit last week, mostly in the backfield, where he carried 7 times for 27 yards or whatever. But a good point. We all thought, as we sat here earlier in the year, that the tight ends would figure more in the offense.
Well, and Matt's new here to this area in the last several months, but we've had this question come up every year for the last several years.
Go back to like Ken Doger.
Yeah, I mean it's been a while. I mean I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I guess you take what the defense gives you during the course of a game.
Right.
I don't know if it's just they haven't found them or they haven't been looking for them or what, but obviously Valunas caught a touchdown pass a couple of weeks ago. I think they would like to use them more. They just haven't.
Right.
I predicted 60 receptions for John Davis this year. He's got some work to do these last 3 games. It's about 20 a game. So John better get on it, and Nathan Schilhaus better find him a lot. I don't know why it hasn't worked. I think they're all talented kids. Maybe they just don't fit in this offense and what they want to do. I don't know. It's really puzzling, and they're such talented athletes.
Right. And the running game, John Davis factored in. He's got twice as many carries as he does catches. And Eddie Valunas, looking at his numbers, he only got 5 catches. 2 of those are touchdowns. So they've been effective the few times they've hit him. So it'll be interesting to see how that factors, and maybe they want to develop that over the next couple of weeks here. Well, next up, we're going to take our look at Minnesota. The Gophers are a win away from a bowl. The Illini might want to play spoiler. That's next on Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football. Welcome back to Inside the Illini. Time to talk about today's matchup. Now, Illinois fans can sympathize with Minnesota a little bit, and a 4-0 start that kind of mirrored the 2011 Illini, maybe a little bit due to their schedule. But Minnesota comes to town at 5-4, a chance to clinch a bowl game. Our O'Brien Auto Park of Urbana weekly preview looks at the Golden Gophers.
The Gophers aren't flashy, a middle-of-the-road team in every major statistical category. They shot out to a good start this year against teams like UNLV, New Hampshire, and Western Michigan. Over the last month, they've become a bit easier to measure. Decisive losses to Iowa, Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Michigan. None of them ranked when they played.
I think they're getting better. I mean, there's a lot of good things. I think we're making some progression.
Strength of schedule aside, the Gophers are 5-4 and have 3 chances to win 1 for their first bowl eligibility since 2009.
Even though they've done things well, they're looking to get into the bowl picture.
Minnesota has undergone musical chairs at quarterback. Seasoned starter Marquise Gray was replaced after an early injury. He came back as a wide receiver with 11 catches for 116 yards in his last 4 games. He was replaced under center by Max Shortell, who was pulled after 3 inconsistent games for freshman Philip Nelson. Nelson, now the starter of the last 3 weeks, has been solid, but not outstanding, completing 54% of his passes with a 6-2 touchdown interception ratio. Long story short, the Gophers are a team yet to find their comfort zone. The Illini hope to take advantage.
We just want to be assignment sound. We're probably more concerned about us right now, and making sure we know exactly what, the game plan is and how we want to execute it.
Out of bowl contention now, the only goal that remains for the Illini, get better. After this week, the Gophers have tough games against Nebraska and Michigan State. You could say this is their most winnable of their remaining 3. So the Illini have a chance to play spoiler, and in a strange way, that tends to motivate teams.
Well, every game's a bowl game for us now, and we're taking each one of these football games as being that type of atmosphere.
The fact is, some of these seniors, after these next 3 games, they'll never play football again. So I think we owe it to them to send those guys out the right way, and to me, the right way is getting a win.
Well, here we are on Dad's Day, on honoring their military day. A lot of things that Coach Beckman this week was talking about hopefully will inspire the team a bit. They don't have a bowl game to play for, so I guess anything they can take to inspire them helps this week.
It's kind of a 3-game bowl trip for them.
Right.
Every game's a bowl game, and when you're trying to get that first win in a while, and Jerry Kill brings his team into town. Minnesota's had a lot of luck here. They won the last 3 games in Champaign, 9 of the last 12 overall. Jerry Kill at Minnesota looking for his first road win. As you mentioned, they're a game away from being bowl eligible, so a lot on the line for them as well. But for Illinois, just any kind of win, it doesn't matter how you get it, is what they need.
Well, it's funny when you think about it, because Minnesota's been a thorn in Illinois' side all the way back to the Ron Turner days. And Illinois won a couple of games in Minneapolis at the Metrodome and one at TCF Bank Stadium. But Steve mentioned they've lost 3 straight to the Gophers. They've had 1 win at home against Minnesota since 1995. And that is weird to think. You think, okay, with Michigan, yeah, there might be a streak like that. Minnesota?
Right.
And Jerry Kill always seems to do a really good job with his teams. At Southern, at Northern, they just quietly go about their business. They're not flashy. They do have some talent. And as Bob mentioned, and I think you mentioned, they were 4-0. They've struggled a bit lately, but a team that has had success in this building.
Going into this year, if you're an Illinois fan, you would have absolutely circled that game and said, that's a W. Even though Minnesota has had great success here, that's not going to happen this year. And it's just completely flipped because Jerry Kill's team's playing a whole lot better. They figured out quarterback situation, playing better defensively. They've got a running game going a little bit. They're finding some receivers. There was no doubt that he was going to fix that thing, but this is year 2. And he's like a year 2 guy. A lot of coaches come in and it takes them 3 years. But for whatever reason, Jerry Kill's second year, he's good to go. He's starting to think about bowl games. So this is a huge game for Minnesota, a critical game, because if they get to 6, they're in a bowl, and that's would be so important for his program, so important for their future. And he's trying to build the recruiting base and all this stuff. So give him credit. And Illinois, you're right, would love to spoil that.
Yeah, Marquise Gray is a triple threat. Here's some stats in his career, okay? Because he started as a quarterback, at a receiver. He has thrown for 2,000 passing yards in his career, 1,600 rushing yards, and 700 receiving yards. So he's definitely a triple threat, a guy that you think you'd look at the next level possibly. But he had a big game last year against Illinois. Philip Nelson is now the quarterback, and he's done really well, starting to come into his own too. They may have found the quarterback they're looking for. And it's funny because Minnesota is the only team with a winning record that has used 3 quarterbacks this year. All the others in the country have used either 4 or 3, and they've all got really bad records. So they've done really well, no matter who's been at quarterback for the most part.
And you mentioned Gray. Look for him. He's number 5. But now that he's out as a receiver, he's a matchup problem. He's 6'5", 250.
Huge.
And that's going to be a matchup problem for somebody out there.
We're talking to coaches this week, in terms of what the Illini have left to play for. Wondering if the players are maybe a little bit more relaxed, because I think it's natural for a college athlete to maybe press a little bit, even at 2-6. There's still that chance to get to a bowl game. There's not going to be a postseason. After Thanksgiving weekend, the season's over. Do you think that maybe relaxes the team a little bit?
Well,
this week?
Illinois more relaxed, obviously, this year than they were last year. After going 6-0, and then you could feel the pressure, and it just crumbled to an end at Minnesota last year in that game. The Illinois, barely got any kind of yardage at all, and Gray ran wild in. So, yeah, but I think if you're Tim Beckman, and Steve mentioned this, you got to get a win any way you can. You've got to get some momentum. You got a chance here to get 3 or 4 wins on the season. I'll tell you what, 4, and with 4 wins looks a lot better than having only 2 wins going into next year.
Well, and the deal is, a lot of people would say, Tim Beckman just roll the dice, run crazy plays all the time. You can't really do that. You've got to do what your basic stuff is. Now, should you take a few chances? Yeah, I don't think that'd be a bad idea. Run a couple exotic plays, but you don't need to do that all game. You have to stick to your basics because, like you said, bottom line is these guys need a win in the absolute worst way.
And it's like you said, any way you can take it. Well, we'll see how they do today at 2:30 kickoff here in Champaign at Memorial Stadium. The Illini take on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I'll tell you what, this one and next week a couple of games. If you want to get to that 4-win total, those are the ones you got to get to. Thanks for watching Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football. And before we go, we do have to give away a couple of tickets, as we do every week. Matthew McDaniel out of Savoy was here at Buffalo Wild Wings. He wins our 2 tickets. Hopefully he's enjoying the game here in a few hours. Thanks for watching the show. We'll see you back here next week as the Illini get ready for Purdue.
Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football is brought to you by your local Anheuser-Busch distributors. Ray Eldridge Jewelry, elegance without the attitude. Peoria and Decatur. Physician's Choice Wellness, give away your weight today. And Buffalo Wild Wings, Mattoon, Champaign, Savoy.